All right, guys. As you see, Tina's current state right here. Let me go ahead and give them a look-see. I sold the 24 14s this weekend. I got to come and pick them up. They were never a permanent setup for this truck. We stuck them on here because I wanted to put the stocks on the 6.7. That was the only reason. So we are still continuing on with our plans of dually swapping Tina. So today we're going to go outside. Actually, we're not going to go outside yet. We're going to pull the rear end out from underneath Tina. And I do still need to check the gear ratio on the dually front end for the parts truck. And see if we can just swap the spacers over, if we're going to have to swap the whole axle over. But we're going to get this thing dually swapped and get it set up on 35s on the stock 17s for temporary roller purposes. And then later on, we're going to run 10 lugs and milled 22 5s and have the option to either swap to super singles on the front or dualies on the front, but we'll have dualies on the rear. So we're going to dive into getting the dually stuff swapped over, and then after we get all that done, we're going to get this front clip mounted this week. So without further ado, pitter patter, let's get at her. Handy dandy gear ratio tab cleaners right here. What we really want is for this front end to be a 373. Because if this one's a 373, the rear's a 373, that means we can just take the spacers off of this front end instead of swapping the whole front end. I guess we could probably just check the door tag. Good. The door tag should show it. That means it's a 410 front. I don't want 410s. Got some thinking to do. Alright guys, we're in the shop, getting down on this axle swap. Got my cameraman over here working. I've been having some issues with my 6.7. This thing was like skipping and like kind of like surging and chugging going on the road with a load behind it, or just regular driving down the road. And at idle, it was sitting surge. The only code that I was getting was a memory code for the crank sensor. So we put a new crank sensor on it and it was still doing it. So I was like at a loss for my words, shut the truck off, went and got some food, let it cool down for a little while, started it back up to come and try some more stuff. And now it ain't doing it at all anymore. So, but whenever I do figure it out, I'll let y'all know. We're getting down with this axle swap. Gonna get the front end dropped out. We do have to change the entire front and rear axle sets between both trucks because Tina's axles are 373 gears. The dually axles are 410s. So we're just gonna go ahead and swap the entire axle housings and everything in and run 410s in Tina. So without further ado, we're going to set you guys up on the time lapse, drop these axles out, drop the other axles out, slap those axles up on her here. Pitter patter, let's get at her. Get these axles out of here. All right, go ahead, come on forward, put the forks underneath it, pick it up. Just come on forward and put the forks under it, pick it up. Whoa, whoa. All right, up. Skadoosh. Let me get my chain off. All right. We gotta figure out how we're gonna chain this one up. To stretch all the way back there because we can't get the forklift up in here. Probably could actually. I don't want to try though. And we got the front one going on. Ah, man, that's loud. Okay. Good grief. Hey, back up that way and come around this way. Get this top side creeper out of his way. We still gotta freaking drop the axles out from underneath that one tonight too. Or today. It's almost night. That's still messing up and doing funky stuff. But got the freaking spinny light on there. Oh gosh. There you go. All right, pick that up right there. Hang on.
Crap.
Oh crap, back up a little bit. All right, now let it down. Okay. All right guys, we're back in the shop, getting ready to get these dually axles up underneath Tina. But first, we gotta take the 6-ton jack stands out from underneath the 66 F100 frame so that I can use them to hold up the frame on the 6.0 POWERSTROKE parts truck. So we have to go outside across the parking lot and get my 4 3-ton jack stands to be able to put underneath the 66 F100 frame. Then we can get our 6 tons out of there and get them tall enough to reach the frame rails on this Super Duty parts truck and get the axles off from underneath it. So, you know the drill. Without further ado, pitter patter, let's get right at her. It is a windy one out here today, so I'm not going to do much commentating on this one. We're just going to set the camera up in time lapse and get these axles yanked out of this truck so we can get them inside the shop and get them up underneath Tina. Let's go. All right guys, by myself, got the axles out from underneath the parts truck. We are now heading over to the Ford dealership that my buddy Wiley works at to see if we can try to get a sensor for the old daily driver 6.7 here. I'll see if I can catch a little bit of it on the video. This thing is cutting out super bad on takeoff and sometimes while I'm driving. Literally earlier while I was dragging those axles out from underneath the parts truck, it died on me 3 times. And the only code that I'm getting out of this thing is a crank sensor. And it's not even like a continuous code, it's a memory code. So it's not like an all the time thing, it's just intermittent signal. So we're gonna go put a new Ford sensor on it and see and hope and pray that fixes it. Fingers crossed. Let's go. All right, so you can't tell right now because I'm going too fast, but watch that RPM needle right there. Bounce around. Bouncing all over the place. I'm really praying. I'm believing this crank sensor is gonna fix it. It's gonna fix it. If it doesn't, it's probably wiring. Have to strip the whole wiring harness out and pull all the wiring loom off. I've heard that's a really bad thing with these trucks. The wiring harnesses get really dry rotted and start cracking and breaking. Usually around the fuel rail. But this truck doesn't have any fuel rail codes. Everybody that's told me about the fuel rail issue says that it throws codes for fuel rail. They go through changing sensors for fuel pressure regulator and all that stuff, and it never fixes it and ends up being the wiring harness. I don't have any codes for fuel stuff. The only code that I have that I can physically see on this truck is crank sensor. But it just blows my mind at how I've already put a brand new crank sensor on here from Napa. So blows my mind. Get Motorcraft parts. This Motorcraft sensor is gonna fix it. Let's go. All right, guys, we're back at the shop. New crank sensor did not fix it. It's still doing the same thing. So I'm thinking it's got to be in the wiring harness. I'm gonna tackle it another time. We're gonna get these dually axles up underneath Tina, get them rolled up under here, start putting them in there. Let's go. What's up, guys? It is now like 11 o'clock at night. I think it's actually past 11. It's 11:30. So we still don't have axles underneath Tina. That's because I said that I was going to work on the 6.7 later and actually decided to just dive right in and work on it right then. Then I had to go to church, do the Facebook Live for the church. So we're finally back. I got the 6.7 figured out, got it fixed. Thank God, finally. That weight's off my shoulders. I'm gonna go ahead and slap these axles in here without painting anything. As I showed you guys before, these coil buckets are quite crusty, and I need this 2-post lift like now. I have other stuff to work on. So I gotta get Tina back on rolling axles, be able to pull it out of the shop and get other stuff in here. Then whenever the coil buckets come in, the new coil buckets, I think I'm gonna have them powdered. So I'm gonna go ahead and have the coil buckets and the coil springs powdered. And then whenever I get those back, I'm gonna go through and assemble everything and clean everything up while I'm assembling it and painting it. So we're gonna set the camera up, put her back in time lapse, and get these axles slapped back in here. Let's go. Also, we did get our leveling kit in finally. So we will be putting that on with the axles and suspension right now. So we are going to be sitting 2 inches higher in the front than what we used to be. So I'm stoked for that. Just finally going to sit level instead of nose heavy. We do have some pretty hefty springs in the back, so I'm not too worried about it, how much it's going to sag out. So don't worry about that, all right? We ain't worried about it. We like them to sit level or a little nose high. That's how we do things around here. I don't squat them. I just like them to sit level or a little nose high. That's it, all right? Let's get to work. All right, guys, we got her sitting down on her own weight as a dually. I did run into a small little hiccup. I had the boys over last weekend. We all hung out, and one of my buddies has a 7.3 POWERSTROKE, and he wanted to lower the back end of his truck, needed some U-bolts. So I let him take the U-bolts out of my dually parts truck, thinking that Tina's U-bolts would work for this dually swap. I was wrong. 3/4 tons use a 3.5 inch U-bolt, and 1 tons use a 4 inch wide U-bolt. The 3/4 ton U-bolts will not go over this rear axle. So we're gonna have to pause for now, call it a night, get him back over here tomorrow, get my dually U-bolts off of his truck, and put the single wheel U-bolts from Tina's original axles under his truck, and get the U-bolts that are on his truck back under here, so I can get this rear axle on here, and we can continue rolling on with getting all this stuff bolted up and getting this thing out of here. I'm gonna go clean up, call it a night. All right, guys, we got the axles tied up on there. I ran into my second snag now. First snag, Kyle over here stole my U-bolts. Couldn't get my axle up in there. We got her bolted up. Now, my freaking drive shaft's too long because the pinion on the dually axle is longer, apparently. I just found that out. So now, I'm gonna go ahead and yank this drive shaft out, and I'm gonna shorten it myself. Let's go. All right, guys, we got her shortened up. Got our 1.5 inches taken out of it. We're ready to toss her back into the old truck. Let's get at it. That is what I'm talking about. All right, guys, so we obviously have a lot of progress made, but we have a long way to go. But we finally got the dually swap finished on Tina. All the brakes are hooked up. We're not fully bled out yet. I still need coil buckets for it. The coil buckets are on order though, so we will have them sometime next week. And I gotta get 35s for the steel 17s because we still have yet to come across the deal I'm looking for on some 22-inch 10 lugs. So that's where we're at with it, but check it out. As I said, we still have coil buckets that are coming in for it, so I'm going to be stripping it back apart sometime within the next few weeks to put those coil buckets on. But I'll probably have them sandblasted first, which means I'll strip it back apart first and pull the coil springs back off, send the coil springs out for powder with the coil buckets, and probably pick out a few other little things on top of the front axle and the rear axle and stuff to have powdered as well, just to kind of put a few little touches up in there. But that's it for this one, guys. Stay tuned for next week's video. We'll probably be making a lot more progress on this week. That axle swap really sucked a lot of my time out this week. But next week we'll get back on this axle swap, get these axle shafts and the front suspension all back together, start routing brake lines, get the wiring harness in, just start getting this thing ready to set the engine and transmission in it. We do still have to build a transmission crossmember mount because we're putting a 90s model E4OD automatic in it because the customer wanted overdrive. So I got to build him a transmission mount to do that. He dropped the engine off today, but you guys have to come back next week and see the engine then. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, share it with a friend. We'll see y'all next week. Peace out.